Hi for everyone who's joined us already. Thank you very much. We might just wait another minute or two for the stragglers, and then we'll get started. Okay, well, we'll jump into it now. So, hi everyone, welcome. Thank you very much for taking time out of your no doubt busy day to join us here as we take a high look level at the latest and greatest from the recent SketchUp release, SketchUp 2026. Just before we dive into it, just some quick housekeeping rules. The session is being recorded and will be shared with attendees. Please use the chat box to ask any questions. You'll notice you're all muted. Please use the chat box to ask questions. We'll get to as many of those questions as we can at the end of the session. And if we don't get to your question, please feel free to email us so that we can respond to those. So I'm Peter Foldies. I'm the National Strategic Accounts Manager for SketchUp here at BuildingPoint Australia. As the official partner for Trimble here in Australia, we're the authorised distributors of their portfolio of AEC solutions, and that includes SketchUp. Now, I know from looking at the attendee and registrar list that we have a broad mix of professionals tuning in today. Some of you are probably SketchUp veterans, keen to see what the new superpowers are being released as part of 2026. Others are possibly newbies, checking out how SketchUp can streamline communication and design processes, and importantly, to win you more work. So no matter which stage you're at or which one of those camps you're in, you're certainly in the right place, and we'll be able to get significant value out of today's session. So for too long, the industry has seen SketchUp as just a fun, easy to use 3D modeler. And whilst that's absolutely true, the reality is that SketchUp today is so much more, never more so than as of the 2026 release and its features. So this isn't just a 3D drawing program anymore. It's a complete ecosystem of applications that can take you all the way from initial concept to detailed documentation and emotion-evoking visualizations while saving you time, money, and whilst improving collaboration. It's a flexible suite that allows you to effortlessly design, communicate, and importantly, to sell your ideas. Now, those ideas might be a building design, it might be an interior reimagining, or it might be the layout and logistical management of a construction site. These are all ideas, and SketchUp is certainly a powerful tool for helping in these processes. But look, enough from me. It is my pleasure to introduce my colleagues. So the real excitement today will come from our technical experts here. So I'm thrilled to introduce two of SketchUp Australia's finest, our technical account managers / SketchUp ninjas, Ben Hobart and Hector Sarmiento. Without further ado, Ben and Hector, over to you guys to show us through some of the magic of 2026.
Thank you, Peter. And thank you everyone for joining us. So my name, like Peter said before, my name is Hector. I'm a technical account manager here at BuildingPoint, specifically for SketchUp. So what we're going to talk about in this session is more like an informative session. So we're not going to go into all the details, or we have selected what we think here in BuildingPoint, what we think are the main the main updates and the most important updates in this 2026 release of SketchUp. So keeping that in mind, then let's go with let's talk a little bit about visualization and what's new in that area. So you guys, if you probably lots of you are familiar with all the updates and all the improvements that SketchUp has done in terms of visualization. Ambient occlusion, of course, is not new, but there has been some new functionalities with ambient occlusion, and we'll have a look in that into those in more detail in a minute. We have included some things in terms of PVR materials, like invert roughness, and we'll show that in a minute as well. And also the AI render, which is obviously AI is everywhere. And you guys are probably familiar with Diffusion from before. Now the Diffusion version 2 is out there. You're gonna notice the first thing that you're gonna notice is not called Diffusion anymore, but it's called AI render. But it works pretty similar to what we used to, and we'll go through that in a minute. In terms of ambient occlusion, when ambient occlusion came into SketchUp, it's probably one of the best things in terms of how your models and your projects look. Ambient occlusion is giving that sort of like depth by adding those shadows when the edges meet. So that was a very welcome addition when ambient occlusion came out for the first time. But now we have two new updates to ambient occlusion. The first one is the scale multiplier. So the scale multiplier, or the instance multiplier, is basically an option that we didn't have before, because when we had when you have your models, big models, or like in this example showing like a sort of section of a city or section of a site, then the ambient occlusion wasn't very clear before because of the size of the project. Now with the distance multiplier, it allows you, no matter how big or how small your project is, it just gives us that option to with the slider, just to show that ambient occlusion in the best way. The other feature that is included with ambient occlusion is the ability to add color. Before, it was only limited to sort of like a grayscale, sort of like dark. Now we have the ability to change the color and to set the color to whatever you want, really. It all depends on you guys, what you want to do. You want to highlight some areas or not. It's basically that option there on the ambient occlusion. If you don't know what ambient occlusion or where to find it, obviously it's in the style tab in SketchUp. And then under the style, under your faces, you're gonna have a look. You're gonna see the ambient occlusion option that obviously you can turn on and off as you want to. But yeah, that's basically ambient occlusion for you guys. Or the new updates. Another update in the material side of things. Obviously, most of you hopefully are familiar with the PVR materials that were included previously. This is the idea of these PVR materials is just to make things look a little bit more realistic within a SketchUp. And then one of the new things is the invert roughness, which is basically how to control, gives you the option to control how smooth or rough your surfaces are. So in this example, basically we have the two options with the invert roughness to 0 and the invert roughness to 1. Obviously, that's going to create different results and different according to the texture that you're using. But it gives you a little bit more control of the input that you wanted to achieve. One of the biggest things for me anyway is the inclusion of the diffusion version 2, which I mentioned before, is something that is called AI render. Now it's an extension. It's still an extension. So if you're on a desktop, you just have to go to your extensions warehouse. Just type AI render and you can download it. It's free, still free. But there's a little bit of changes in terms of, if you guys were familiar with Diffusion before, it'll open a window like you see in the first image that reflects whatever image that you, or whatever scene or image that you have in your SketchUp. So it opens a window like that. It's basically gonna run based on credits. So you're gonna, depending on the kind of subscription that you have, whether it's Pro or Studio, you have credits available. So in a Studio, I believe it is 200 credits and 150 credits for the Pro subscribers. So although it's a nice way to just go and play around and create different renders and stuff like that, be aware now that you're gonna have those credits, and the more renders you do, obviously you're gonna use those credits, and they will reset automatically every month. But if you don't, they're not accumulate. If you don't use the credits, they're not going to accumulate for the next term. So just be aware of that. But it's good in the sense that now we have ability to, if you go to the next slide, we have the ability to auto prompt. If you're not a king of prompt, then that's the auto prompt. Basically, AI is going to read whatever is on your screen and give you that option. But again, like any AI tool up there, is as good as the result that you're going to get is as good as the way you fit it. So the more control you give, or the more detail you give to your prompts, the better results you're going to get. But in saying that, once you have the options, or once you have the result or the output, you have the ability to change things. And those changes, if you, so the initial render is going to be 5 credits, just to give you an example. But once you start to modify things on that specific render, then it's going to be, changes are going to be like 1 credit and stuff like that. So just be aware of the credits. And like I said, the better the prompt, the better the result. So we're going to have things like negative prompt. We're just going to have the options to change things if you don't like something. If you wanted to delete something of your image, if you want to change the material of something, you're going to be able to do that. And you're going to be able to add people or change the background if you want a night sky instead of, a night background rather than a day background, things like that. You're going to be able to do that. And even if you wanted to create, there's going to be a section called draft. If you want to add, you can put something, drop something with your mouse and say, I want this to be, I don't know, a cushion, for instance. It'll add a cushion to that in this example specifically. So there's a little bit more control basically in your results. As different to us before, it was a little bit, AI is still, still in the works. You're never gonna get the perfect result, but now we have the ability to modify that result to suit our needs and obviously create better outputs. Ben, please join us.
Thank you, Hector. Yeah, that's really exciting to see some of those new Yeah, visualization features. I think diffusion, as you mentioned, is just yeah, the new update there is an absolute game changer, and I think that you should all be very excited to dive into that if you haven't already. Yeah, as Peter mentioned, my name's Ben, and I'm one of the another one of the technical account managers here at BuildingPoint for SketchUp. Yeah, mainly in the education space as well. So, if that's something you're into, then feel free to talk to me afterwards. I'm going to be speaking specifically about SketchUp's, well, the next version of SketchUp. It's probably its biggest change that's been added in this next version. And it's all about collaboration. And so basically what we're doing is we're moving in towards real-time collaboration. And this update is going to be all about real-time feedback. But before we dive too far into that, I do want to just sort of go over the sort of thinking behind the context of this tool. So as most of you probably in here are aware, like obviously design rarely happens in isolation, and it's shaped through conversation with different stakeholders and yeah, people in the design process. And obviously having lots and lots of different people does present a few challenges. How it's done today is through sharing of emails, lots of email trails, maybe even scanning written notes on drawings and whatnot, sharing your screen, get your computer at home, even doing, old-fashioned architectural pinups, for example. I don't know how many people are doing that, but there are lots of different ways that we give feedback at the moment. And I think that this new update is presenting an alternative in the design world that I think is really exciting. So as I mentioned before, we're on the path to real-time collaboration at the moment. This isn't going to be, having multiple people in the model and editing the same thing at the same time, but that kind of looks like the trend we're heading in. So who knows? I'm fingers crossed. In the previous version of SketchUp, we had link sharing. So if you haven't used that already, I'm just going to go over it really quickly. It's just an ability to go into your model and then share it with people that you want to see, that you want them to see the model. They just copy into their browser, and all it does is it allows them to see the model that you've got, the most up-to-date version of that model. They can orbit around it. In this next version of SketchUp, that are highlighted in blue, we can see that there's been a few updates here. So link sharing has been updated. I'll talk a little bit more about that moving forward. But now we've also got some new features such as real-time viewing and also commenting. So these are some new features that have been added. Let's start with sharing. So when we go and use this tool for the first time, yeah, obviously we've got to share it, and we've got to start by sharing our projects via an email, or that can be sent via a link, and that's built into the interface. And so you can send the email directly from the SketchUp program as well, which is nice. You just put their email in and away you go. When doing this as well, you can also specify the permissions. So, you might actually only want to share a version that is a view scenes only one. So if you're familiar with scenes, you can just have it limited to the scenes that you select. And then you don't have people going into the back end of your model that might be a bit unsightly and a little bit unfinished. So it's good to be able to control it and focus it down on stuff that that is ready to be presented. Alternatively, you can go into a more sort of unrestricted sharing permission, and that's called comment access. And that allows users to go into the model, navigate around it, and comment on the model, which we'll show in a second. So this is what that sharing looks like. I think the first thing that's going to be really important to note is that you do need to save this to Trimble Connect before you'll be able to share the model with other people. And so if you try and do this, it's not, it's pretty self-explanatory. It'll prompt you to do it, but just keep that in the back of your head when you're going to use this for the first time, so it doesn't work straight away. You just need it in Trimble Connect. But as you can see here, we're just adding the email in, and then they've got a canned comment permission, and then we just send it off. So it's very, very straightforward to add people in. You'll also notice that there's a new collaboration bar. So this is the new toolbar when you want to open up this tool set. Okay, once users get into, or they get the invitation into the model to view it, they now get access to real-time viewing, which is one of those new features that I spoke about before. So what this allows people to do is to actually get real-time updates, which is kind of, obvious in the name. But these updates will be, made by the owner of the model, and then people that are viewing it, instead of having to refresh the link and waiting around, they'll actually see the changes made right in front of them. So it's a really great connect between, you know, someone making a comment and then the changes being made and appearing right in front of them, which is really exciting. You'll also notice that now we have avatars and live cursors. So you can see in that image, we've got Ezra, Carlos, Mia, Svenja floating around. We'll show you what that looks like. But yeah, this is going to be showing them where the cursor is. So you can actually see what someone's highlighting and looking at, which is really cool. And then if you really want to see exactly what they're talking about, you can actually do a camera follow. So you can click on the person you want to see their view, and it'll actually shift everyone's perspective to look at that person's view. So you can see exactly the way that they're looking at the model and if they're looking at it correctly or incorrectly, and everyone's going to be on the same page when you do it this way. Once we're in as well, and everyone's kind of navigated around the model, there's an opportunity to be adding comments all over the context. So by in context, you can click on like a group, for example, and leave a context attached. It'll have like a little mark on it. It kind of looks like a sticky note-ish sort of thing, which you can click on and see a thread of conversations, which is great to keep up with, you know, how many changes have been made, and you're not sure. Yeah, you don't lose track of when the changes were made, for example. So it's like a conversation. Collaborators are also able to add images in, so they can upload images from their own, you know, computer. And this is just a great addition for the communication. And as well as this, we can also attach the camera view that we're looking at in the comment itself. So it'll just create a little snapshot so we know exactly what we're talking about. Really small one, but emojis are great just because it allows us to communicate in a way that we're all really familiar with in the age of social media and whatnot. So let's have a look at, is this going to play? Let's have a look at this in action now. So you can see that we've got a big model up in front of us, and we've got that new collaboration bar sort of floating up in that top right corner. As I said before, it's really important. This has already been saved to Trimble Connect. I'm not going through that process, but that's going to be crucial in order to get this to work properly. Then you can see here that we've clicked on the comment tool and we've actually applied a comment to this roof structure here. We're typing it in. You can see that there's that viewport of the actual camera angle itself, which is really great. And then we've just added a comment here. So Joseph, I'm not Joseph. This is a video. Obviously, I'm not doing this. But Joseph says, we are thinking about an exposed structure. Any concerns? And now the rest of the team that's in. So we've got Tom's going to be in here. Can't remember what the other guys' names are. They're going to be floating around. You can see his little cursor floating around in space. You can turn this on and off as well, by the way. So if you don't want to see people floating around, you can just sort of hide this collaboration toolbar, and then you don't have to worry about people getting in your way if you're trying to model. Okay, Tom's come back. He said, would it be difficult to conceal the conduit wiring? And so there's just conversation that's naturally coming out of this. It's really, really fast. As fast as Tom can type is the answer that you can get. That's how quick it can happen. There's going to be a little bit more back and forth here. Let's look at the code and get back to them. Great. Send that off. Cool. So you can see here, once we've finished the conversation, we can close it up, go back, and you can actually see different conversations and comments and whatnot appearing around. Now, this is a really exciting one. I mentioned before that we can add photos. Here's an example of where that might be really cool. So Tom has gone, okay, what about these heaters? He's got an idea to add some heaters into this model, and he's so he's sent the photo through. We can download that image, and then we can use the 3D Warehouse's search by uploading an image, the 3D Warehouse image search, to actually find that. So if you haven't used that before, this has been around for a couple of years, but it's just an awesome way to find the closest model. It's not an exact replica, but it's the closest model that it can find based off the image you've uploaded, and it uses some AI tech in order to do that as well. So we're in here, we're going, okay, that's a great idea, heaters, and let's start adding them in. Obviously, because we're the project owner, we can do all the editing. These other collaborators can't actually edit or anything, but they can see these changes that we're making happening in real time. So again, I'm really scratching the surface here. We just don't have enough time to go into all the nitty gritties around this, but it's a really exciting new feature, and I hope you see the potential in this. And I'm sure you're all starting to think about ways that you can use this, whether just internally in the design process or actually with customers and getting them to give you their feedback, which is really cool. I'm going to move it on, and I'm going to hand it back to Hector, who's going to talk about interoperability. I always screw that word up. It's a tough one.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, interoperability has been something that SketchUp has been working very hard on in the last, I don't know, probably 2 years. The idea of this is just to close the gap in between the communication between different platforms, different software platforms. The idea is that obviously there's different companies and different people that use different platforms, and that's okay. The idea is just to make communication in between those platforms as smooth as possible, and this is just basically to make your workflow better, more fluent, and without interruptions or difficult steps of converting files and things like that. So to that, in terms of interoperability, we have, or SketchUp has included a lot of things in terms of IFC. If you guys are working with IFC files and are in the BIM area. So there's a few changes in terms of that. Same as the trim bin files. Obviously, trim bin is the files that are exclusive for Trimble. But yes, so there's options there as well. In terms of DWGs, there's been a lot of work on that. Like I said, making that transition easier, and not having to clean up files, make the import options better, export options better, read things from other platforms like AutoCAD, for instance, make that transition easier, and read things that someone might do in AutoCAD if you have contractors or people that are sending you files from other platforms like AutoCAD, then you know that opening those files into SketchUp or Layout will be, the idea is more seamless, and less headaches. So let's jump a little bit in terms of those DWG import options. And now, as you can see in the slide, in earlier this year, I guess, we didn't have the options of Lineworks and flatten Lineworks or import the layers from CAD files into groups. Now we have that ability, and what that looks like is something like this. I don't know if you guys have experienced this before. When you're trying to import a file, a DWG file, usually come into SketchUp with some extra geometry, and what that means is that then you have to add spend a little bit more time doing some cleanups and stuff like that, like the image and the on the bottom there, it shows like different levels. So that basically just add to your workflow, add time to your workflow, and usually time is what we don't have. So in order to make that process a little bit better, then what SketchUp has done is just to set up the set value of that imported geometry to 0. So when you import those files into SketchUp, then those files are going to be at the same level. And also, in terms of something that we didn't have before, is that SketchUp now has the option to create groups. Those groups that SketchUp is going to create when you import a DWG is based on DWG layers structure. Obviously, if you're familiar with DWGs and AutoCAD, they use layers. So when we import that into SketchUp, they'll create those layers into groups to make it a little bit better in terms of manage your data and work with the data from other platforms. Here's a really quick video just to show really quickly, basically what we mentioned before. it's just when importing a DWG file. Usually comes something like this with different set values. So now that's something that is not going to happen anymore because you have the flatten option, the flatten line work option now. And when you click that, then you're going to see in a minute what's happening in there. So all the geometry is going to come clean, and there's not extra work or extra cleaning up to do. And also we're looking at that, all the groups that have been created in SketchUp from those files. Another thing that a lot of improvements in terms of this, like closing the gap in between communication with different platforms is just now we have the ability to have more control and moving out and in from layout and from SketchUp into CAD environments. So basically, what is more like fidelity in terms of the content. It's better. DWG now when importing a DWG file into SketchUp, now we're gonna be able to support hatches, so we can read hatches. If the hatch is a solid hatch, it'll become in SketchUp like a surface. If it's lines or a pattern or a specific hatch pattern, it's gonna come into SketchUp as edges. So that's we're gonna read that better. Layout also export each page as a separate file, so we now have that control to export these DWGs as a different files. And another thing that is very important, and we'll see in a minute, is how elements SketchUp like curves and polylines in SketchUp now translate into elements, CAD elements, a little bit better. I don't know if you guys, when you see familiar with curves in SketchUp, basically the curves are made out of tiny segments or the number of segments that you have created, and this is very clear when you do circles. But now these transition in between SketchUp and DWGs, those transitions are very more optimized in terms of those elements that are gonna read better in your CAD platform. And I'll also like I explained before, like viewports are gonna export. You're gonna see the different viewports in there. Like this is bringing export DWG from SketchUp from layout, sorry, into CAD, and then you will see the different viewports, and also the tags from layout are preserved when you export it as a DWG. This is what I was mentioned before. You can see here how these curve lines now are more efficient, meaning that you don't have to weld anything. Obviously, there's a lot of improvement. Everything is not going to show perfect at this point in time, but the improvement is massive in the sense that you don't gonna have to go through all these different segments and weld all these segments because there's improvement in this area. So that means less broken lines, less work, less cleanup work, and obviously efficiency in your workflow. Now back to Ben.
Thank you, Hector. Yeah, it wouldn't be a SketchUp update if we didn't talk about layout. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Hopefully you're familiar with layout. If you're not, SketchUp layout is the 2D component, I guess you could call it, of SketchUp, which is really good. And it's kind of where we do our documentation typically for SketchUp. So let's go into some of the features and changes that have been made here. So to start with, there have been some new additions. We've got some new tools, which are really exciting. So I'm going to cover them in the next slide. We've also got some scrapbook entities, which I'm going to cover as well, which is great. Hector already spoke about some of the DWG support and updates there, so I'm not going to spend much time going over that because we'd be double dipping. But then we've also got some changes. This is probably the biggest visual change you'll notice is actually in the user interface on a Windows-based machine. So we'll go into that as well, but it's actually not on for Mac as well. So for Mac users, it's all going to be the same. I mean, SketchUp and layout on a Mac is already a pretty unified experience, but for Windows, there's now been a bit more of a seamless sort of integration between the two, and they look a lot more similar. As always, there's going to be some performance improvements and bug fixes. Not super exciting to talk about, so I won't, but they're always a welcome change, and we always love seeing improvements to performances and yeah, seeing those bugs squashed out. So let's talk about those new drafting tools. So we've got 4 new tools, as I spoke about before, and these tools are trim, extend, fillet, and chamfer. As the names would suggest, trim basically is a really quick way for us to trim down intersecting lines, which you can see here in the GIF on screen. The extend is kind of the opposite of that, and it allows us to extend a line out to until another intersection. Our fillet tool is the one that rounds off between corners, and this is something that if you've used other Autodesk software or other CAD softwares, you'll probably be familiar with a tool like this. I know it's very common in like Inventor and yeah, AutoCAD, for example. And then chamfer is a similar tool to fillet, except as opposed to rounding off corners, it actually creates like a 45-degree angle, and it sort of, yeah, squares off the corner a little bit. So let's see those in action. And as you can see here, what I want you to focus on, and it's going to be moving very quickly, but I want you to focus on those lime green lines here. And you'll be able to see very quickly the use of the trim tool. So trim, he's just clicking and dragging, and then boom, all of those lines are gone, which is really cool to see. So you can move way faster than you could before. We're going to use the extend tool now, and we can actually just click on these, and it's just going to extend those lines out to that next intersection. So again, you can move so quickly, you don't actually have to draw out each individual line anymore. It can be a little click. You can use that chamfer tool to create little corners. And then you can see here that they're going to use the fillet tool to create those rounded edges. The offset tool, which is like a SketchUp, sort of very familiar to those people that are using SketchUp, which is everyone in here, I guess. And then, yeah, as you can see, it's a much faster way of going about drafting. And I want to say now that layout is going to be much more drafting friendly than it has been in the past, which is, yeah, a great little addition for sure. I did mention before very briefly about some new additions to scrapbooks. So scrapbooks, if you're not familiar, is just a really awesome way to drag and drop pre-built entities into our layout projects. So you can see it here. We've got those trees, and we're just going to drag and drop them in. What's been changed here is that they've actually added in a whole bunch of new scrapbooks into scrapbook collections, if you will, into our layout for 2026. So now we've got door swing parts, we've got windows, we've got wall sections, we've also got all sorts of furniture. And this is just so good because it means that we can keep our SketchUp models nice and light and then add those extra details in when we need them. So gone are the days where you have to draw your door swing parts on the floor of your SketchUp models. That's something I used to do in order to get it to come across nicely. We don't have to do that anymore. We can just save it right up to that drafting stage. And yeah, it's awesome. Really, really excited about that. There's also some changes to the way that the user interface works. So in this next version, and keep in mind, this is a Windows thing, that we can now change the docking controls for our trays. So we can actually have docks on either side if we wanted to. Before it was pretty fixed. I mean, I definitely used to drag them off onto another monitor or something like that. But now we've got a lot more flexibility. We can actually create duplicate trays on one side, one or the other. And as you can see here, it's actually a little bit more unified, and it looks a lot more like a typical SketchUp project would. You almost can't tell the difference. You can't tell that it's apart from obviously looking at a 2D sheet. It looks a bit too similar in sometimes to a SketchUp Pro project. But the idea here is that it's going to make it much easier move between layer and move between into SketchUp, or to work on that learning curve or that transition between the two. So this is just more on that, but as you can see here, we've got tools floating around in the same way that you'd have them in SketchUp. And yeah, we've got all our trays that we can dock, and yeah, it just looks a lot more like SketchUp Pro, and I think that's a great thing. Hector was talking about these DWG updates before, so again, I'm not going to spend too much time on them, but in short, we can export the pages as separate files. And then I think the biggest and most, well, for me at least, being able to export the layout files with all the tags and all the layers and whatnot preset just allows for such like a much faster transition between layout and like AutoCAD, for example. You don't have to go in, clean it all up, and then retag everything and put it in layers. It does it automatically. It preserves it, and I think that's awesome. I'm going to take it back to Hector one more time now, and then yeah, we're nearing the end, so hang in there.
Thank you, Ben. There's something that is worthwhile to mention, even though it's not specifically new for this release. It's been out a little bit now, but it just, I think it's worth to mention. It's the adding location option in SketchUp. That it's not new. You can geolocate your files, but what is new is that you can now add real-world context into your files, which obviously the idea is just that you don't have to create or any buildings around your area or anything like that, as long as there's buildings available, then you're gonna be able to do that and to include it when you import that when adding location. This is very important when you do like shadow studies and stuff like that, or see how your design will be affected or would be affected, or how affect or would be affected by the buildings around and stuff like that. So to see it in action is basically the same as before. We just add a location to your file. You just go and see where your file is located. And then once you select the area, you can see all those blocks in there, which means that it's just context buildings are already made. And you can add them. You don't have to, but I think so that's the option. But you can see that how when you import that, it'll add all the things that are available for your area. Like I said, it's going to affect whether it's shadows or stuff like that. They're available there for you to import it. And the good thing about it, same with the 3D with the 3D terrain, there will come in a special a special tag that you can toggle on and off. Or if you don't want it from the very beginning, you don't have to import it. But I think it's a very cool feature now. When you are in location to your files. So yeah, I think that's everything for me. Now go back to Ben for the last things that he has to say in terms of Scan Essentials.
Scan Essentials, very exciting. Yeah, so I'm just going to spend 5 minutes, 10 minutes just talking about Scan Essentials and the updates that have been made here in this next version. But I think what's important to do before I dive too much into that is to just talk a little bit about point clouds and what Scan Essentials is all about. So first thing to start with, Scan Essentials is an extension that's available for our SketchUp Studio subscribers only. However, there are 2 new additions that have been added in, so that's Pro Scan and Pro Advanced Workflows. They're basically just SketchUp Studio without the V-Ray component. So if you're interested in talking about these, we could do that at the end. But yeah, that's just where this is not for SketchUp Pro users. It's a tier up. And what it does is it allows us to import point clouds into SketchUp to then be able to work on. So if you're not sure what a point cloud is, we're looking at one right now, and it's a collection of like millions of points that have been collected by a 3D laser scanner. This is something that's obviously pretty cutting edge in the industry at the moment, but it's also something that has rapidly been adopted because of the accuracy and the time savings that are in here. And as you can see, they just look really cool. So basically how it works is you take a scanner into a room or onto a site, you'd set up your iPad, hit go, and it would shoot out a million lasers. I don't know what the exact number is, and that reflects off the surfaces, bounces back in, kind of takes these little mini photos and textures, and then collects them all in 3D space. Each point has an X, Y, Z coordinate. And then as you can see now, we've got all these different points that we can actually reference when we're modeling. So one thing to keep in mind with this is that it's not actually a model. It hasn't automatically produced a model for us. This is the way you can think about it is it's kind of like 3D tracing, if you will. So in the past, we've typically had to go in and model the whole thing using this as the context. We know exactly how big the walls are, how tall everything is, and we do the model to this. We're tracing over it. But there have been some updates that have been made to this Scan Essentials extension, which is what allows us to bring these point clouds in. The first one is to do with texture projection. So now what we can do in Scan Essentials is you can take your point cloud and then you can actually apply the texture that was collected from the point cloud and apply it onto meshes and geometry. This wasn't something that we could do before. And instead, you actually had to go and manually apply materials from your own SketchUp library. But now we can take the point cloud textures and upload them in there. And you can see that in the top right. It looks awesome. And it's so much faster. So you don't have to worry about trying to find the right thing. It's a really great way to get some context in that's actually really, really accurate, millimeter accurate. We've also got an addition to the surface mesh tool. Now, this is something that we could do in the past, but was only available on the ground plane. So we could actually automatically create a mesh based off the points on the point cloud. And it would just, build out the site for us. This is now not something that is limited to the ground, but it's also added onto vertical geometry. So we can actually go, in this instance, you can kind of see it here, but we're able to project geometry. We're able to create a mesh, from the point cloud, and it basically models it for us, which is awesome. I said before that this wasn't a model that was made by itself, but it's kind of moving in that direction where you're going to be able to take a point cloud and it's going to know exactly where everything is, provided the scan was, of a high quality. Cool. Moving forward, there's also been some additions in the sense of scene management. If you have been using Scan Essentials in the past, or dealing with point clouds, you weren't able to do scene-specific point cloud changes, but this is something that's been added now. So what I mean by that is that if you want to have the point cloud toggled on for one scene, and then have like a cut through it in the next scene, change the visibility, maybe you want to show it as a grayscale as opposed to full color for another scene. This is now something you can set up, and you can toggle between all these different setups for different scene management, which is good. And then there's some global transformation improvements that have been made there, so we can actually preserve the original point cloud coordinates. Given that these are something that are located in a real world, it's good to be able to preserve those coordinates. It was a little bit finicky. You'd have to sort of be careful when working in point clouds. You wouldn't move it off the original 0 point before, as it would cause some issues if you sent it back into Trimble Connect. But that's all been, improved vastly. So that's pretty much all from me when it comes to Scan Essentials. And I'm actually just going to give this one back to Peter, and he's going to wrap it up before we go into some questions. So, Peter, when you're ready.
Thanks very much, Hector and Ben. So as you can see, SketchUp 2026 is very obviously a significant leap forward in terms of collaboration, workflow efficiency, and to overall design quality. What we've covered today, though we only had you for an hour and this was an overview, but the point cloud functionality, the file interoperability, new real-time collaboration features, dedicated 2D drafting tools in layout, and of course the overall performance boost to the SketchUp engine. These all tie back to a central idea, which is making your design process more efficient and more impactful. Now, whilst we are proudly very nerdy about SketchUp, so this may not be possible, we sincerely hope that you're as excited about SketchUp 2026 as we are. And look, I can see a few questions that came through while we were going, guys. So we've still got a little bit more time. I'll just quickly pick out a few of these that might be relevant to everyone else. Okay, so this one's from Sophie. What are the minimum device specs required to run SketchUp 2026 smoothly? Do I need to upgrade my computer?
The answer to upgrading the computer is unclear because we don't know what your specs are, but I would say that SketchUp is one of those programs that's really well optimized for most computers. Unless you're running something that's from like the 2000s, you're probably going to be okay. But obviously more is more as well. So like if you've got something that's got some graphic cards in there, or it's got a little bit of extra, beef about it, then that's obviously going to be, yeah, it's going to help. And especially when you're dealing with larger projects as well. For a full list of the recommended specs, you're probably best just looking on the website. I don't know them off the top of my head, but there's plenty of resources online if that's something that you're after. So I hope that gives you some confidence, hopefully.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Okay, just a few more. So this one, I'll paraphrase it just to make it a bit more relevant to the masses. If we want to find out any more about any of these features that you've spoken about today, for instance, like an online module or video, where would you suggest we go?
Well, you can obviously if you have any questions, if you want to talk a little bit more in depth on some of the topics that we explained today, you can send a message to that email address. It's not on the screen. sketchup@buildingpoint.com.au. That will be the best, so we can centralize all these messages, and then we can try to solve your message, whether for a quick 10 minutes phone call, or if there's something more in detail, then we can organize that. But yeah, just try to send your questions, or if you want a little bit more to that email address, and then someone, whether Ben, whether it's myself or Peter, will find a way to find the best to address those questions, or yeah.
And similarly, I know if we're aware of some online resources, we'll happily share those, via link in your email as well. So there's that as well. I hope that answers the question. Okay, another one here. Oh, good one. Are any of the features mentioned today an extra cost to my annual subscription?
Oh, that's a great question.
Great question.
So the Scan Essentials that I just spoke about at the end there is one of those features or extensions that is part of the SketchUp Pro Scan, Pro Advanced Workflows, or SketchUp Studio packages. So again, if you've got SketchUp Pro, then you'll have to upgrade to those next tiers. Other than that, everything else is just part of a SketchUp Pro subscription. So the short answer is no for 99% of it. And if you've already got SketchUp Studio, then no.
Great. Okay, this is a good one as well, and it was something I was going to cover on the next slide. Okay, so I buy my SketchUp subscription through SketchUp.com. What is the difference between buying from them and buying from Building Place? And I'm going to assume you meant BuildingPoint there. Yeah.
Well, the difference is that obviously BuildingPoint, we are the authorized resellers, or the authorized distributors of SketchUp in Australia. So there's nothing wrong by buying directly from SketchUp.com. However, if you want to do that, you are paying more, first of all, and second, you're not going to be able to have local support, which is so I would recommend, if anyone here in this call has purchased the subscription through SketchUp.com, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. It's exactly the same software. But I recommend, if just to check the expiry date or the renewal date on your current subscription, and purchase with us, which allows you to have all the local support, and obviously you're going to pay less for the same product.
I can also see a couple of questions from, I can't see the name. It says AG. I'm terribly sorry. I wish I could see the full name. Just a couple of questions regarding learning modules on how to convert stuff from 3D to 2D models. So I'm guessing what you mean by that is to go from SketchUp Pro into layout, essentially. We do have some courses that we provide. They're a little bit older, so they're going to look a bit different, but it could be a good place to start. Other than that, I know SketchUp Campus is a really great resource that has a lot of workflows with the go between 3D and 2D. So that could be a good place to start. And then I can still see there's another question on information on a programmer integrations. I believe programmer is that extension to do with well, it's not an extension, it's like a service for interior designers, I believe. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe is that yes. Okay, I got it right. I was like, huh. I don't know on what the timeline for an integration is between that. That's obviously there a programmer is another separate to Trimble and SketchUp. So probably best working. I know extensions are generally built by a third party, so probably worth looking at programmer and seeing what their pipeline is there. But yeah, if you do have specific questions, it's something that we can always go back, have a little look around, see if we can find any extra information and help, guide you guys. I think there's another question from Drew as well. Can I ask my surveyors to start sending me point clouds?
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. The only thing, like Ben mentioned before, obviously you're only gonna be able to import those point clouds if you have either a SketchUp Studio, a SketchUp Pro Scan, or advanced workflows. So as long as you are a subscriber of these subscriptions, then of course just start to you'll be amazed of usually these point clouds are massive, like big files in terms of data, but you'll be surprised how well they run once imported into SketchUp. Obviously, that ties up a little bit with someone that was asking about the specs. Obviously, the better your graphics card, because at the end of the day, SketchUp is a software that runs, is a graphics software. So the better your graphics card, the better it's going to handle these things. But even handling that point cloud that Ben showed before of that search, I uploaded that in my laptop, which by all means is not a super machine. It just runs very easily and very smoothly. So yep.
A great question here from Harrison. Do we need to model geometry on top of the point cloud to make it more compatible with layout? So it really depends on what you're after. Typically, yes, you model geometry and then you'd import that into layout. But layout can also show the point clouds as well. So that's the feature that was added in the last update. And so if you're working with point clouds and you actually want to show the point cloud itself, you don't need to model geometry to show that. But it depends on what you're trying to present, for example. So if you're after something that's got that SketchUp sort of, blended reality sort of looking thing where it doesn't look real, but it's stylized, then, modeling the geometry is definitely going to be what you want to do there. But if you want it to look a lot more realistic and to give it the detail that a point cloud provides, assuming it's a good, well scanned point cloud, then you don't need to do the geometry. So I hope that answers that question.
Well, look, in the interest of sticking to time, we might sort of start to wrap it up there. If we didn't get to your question today, we'd urge you to reach out via the email address that's been up on the screen. We love diving into these things, so please feel free to ask those questions. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. The other thing to mention is that we're already planning, a string of a few next webinars. We'd love to make that as relevant as possible and as interesting as possible for you guys, our audience. So please feel free to email through if there's any particular or specific topics or aspects of SketchUp in general, not just 2026, that you'd like us to focus on for future webinars. So it'd be great to get your feedback and input on that as well. Look, as I said, if you have any questions, if you'd like to book an informal obligation-free chat or a customized demonstration, if you'd like to know more about, Hector mentioned it, about the pricing and service benefits by purchasing through SketchUp locally rather than through the US store, please reach out as well. Look, that's it. We're on time. Again, thank you very much for spending that hour with us. Hope you go on to have a great day. I hope this was of value for you, and we're looking forward to connecting with you all and to helping you leverage the power of SketchUp 2026 in the future. Thanks for joining us, and cheers for now.
Thank you, everyone. It's good. Take care.